controller was waiting as Gordon steamed into Knapford station. The big engine had just brought the last train of the day down from Crovan's Gate, and he had heard some bad news just before he had left. "Is something wrong, Gordon?" "Yes, sir," Gordon replied. "It's about Reneus, sir. Scarlo's had an accident and has to be mended, and Reneus has to run the whole railway on its own. It's not fair on him, sir. I mean, he's older than I am." Gordon paused for a second. "My driver told me of another railway, the Mid-Sodor Railway, that also has little engines," he continued. "Would they be able to help, sir?" The Fat Controller said. "I think I may be able to do something. Yes. I will have to make some arrangements." On the Mid-Sodor Railway, things weren't going too well. Duke had been waiting in the railway's workshops for a couple of weeks now. He would need repairs to work properly, but the line didn't need him. There was so little traffic that there was barely enough for Stewart and Falcon to do. All the engines put on a brave face, but they couldn't help noticing that the trains were getting shorter and shorter, and that there were less passengers waiting at the station each day. The Mid-Sodor Railway's manager was outside the shed one morning, when he saw a familiar, suited figure approaching him. "Hello, Topham," he greeted the Fat Controller. The Fat Controller nodded to him. "Good morning, Charles." "What brings you out this way?" the manager asked. "Charles, we're both aware that the Mid-Sodor Railway isn't doing too well financially." Charles nodded grimly. It was a fact he'd known for a few months now. It wasn't a question of if the Mid-Sodor Railway was going to close, but when. "It seems we cannot avoid closing," he said. The Fat Controller nodded sadly. "I have an opportunity for you," he said. "A win-win situation for all parties involved. Are you interested?" "Please go on," said Charles. "I'd welcome any opportunity at the moment." "The Scarloy Railway on the northeast of the island needs engines. Yours will be perfect for them. I also need someone who knows how to run a railroad, to look after Doc's branch line." The Fat Controller explained the situation on the Scarloy Railway, and the deal was done. Soon the final day came. Duke was too old and worn to be of use, so he was put away in the shed. "Goodbye, Grandpuff," Stewart said sadly. "We'll come back for you, you know." "You two just take care of yourselves," Duke replied. Falcon puffed away angrily towards the siding where he and Stewart would be loaded onto a flat car to be transported across the Northwest Railway. Stewart followed him sadly. Later that day, Stewart and Falcon arrived at the Scarlowy Railway on one of Henry's freight trains. "Here you are," Henry said as he puffed away. "Welcome to your new home." "It's not fair," Falcon complained. He had been in a bad mood for most of the trip, and it was beginning to annoy Stewart. "We could have been sold for scrap," Stewart replied angrily. Falcon quickly stopped complaining. A couple of days later, Stewart was bringing a passenger train into Crovan's Gate. He was due to meet another train there for a connecting service to the Farquhar branch. As he pulled into Crovan's Gate, he spotted an unusual-looking locomotive waiting at the front of a passenger train. "You must be my connection," he said. "Yes, and I can see from your nameplate that you're Stewart. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Toby, by the way. Are you new here, Stewart?" "Yes," Stewart replied. "We only arrived a couple of days ago." "We?" inquired Toby. "Falcon arrived with me," Stewart explained. "How's he settling in?" Toby asked. A concerned look crossed Stewart's face. "Not that well," he replied. "I'm afraid he's a bit homesick." "I can understand that," Toby replied. "My old line closed down as well." Both engines fell silent for a moment, remembering their old railways, the fallen flags of years gone by. Toby brightened up again a few moments later. "Luckily I was rescued and brought here," he said, "or I would have spent the rest of my years alone in a shed." "Yes," Stewart said sadly, thinking of Duke, locked up alone in their old shed. "Luckily your Fat Controller arranged to have us brought by the Scarlowy Railway. He saved us." "Oh yes," Toby replied. "He has a habit of doing that. I'm afraid I must be going," he continued, "but I hope your friend feels better soon." "So do I," Stewart replied as Toby headed off. But Falcon wasn't feeling better, and the rainy weather the next day only made him grumpier. He angrily bumped the slate cars he was due to take down to Crovan's Gate. "Come on, you," he said. "Get moving!" As Falcon began moving his train, the trucks started plotting amongst themselves to get him back. "We'll get him on the hill, we'll get him on the hill," they whispered to each other. Falcon continued along the line, oblivious to the truck's plans and just as grumpy. They reached the last hill before Crovan's Gate, and the trucks put their plan into action. On, they screamed as they pushed into Falcon. A horrified look crossed Falcon's face. He could feel himself losing control. At the station at the bottom of the hill, Reneus was just setting out some freight cars. He looked over sharply as he heard a terrified whistle in the distance. "That sounds like Falcon," he said. He quickly backed down onto Falcon's line. As Falcon came into view, Reneus started moving backwards to catch the runaway train. Falcon quickly caught up with him and Reneus applied his brakes, slowly bringing the runaway train to a halt. Falcon didn't speak for a moment while he caught up with what had just happened. "You could have been damaged," he said. "What are friends for?" Reneus replied. "I thought you'd be able to handle a train like that on your own, though." "It's my brakes," Falcon replied. "Our old railway couldn't really afford to give Stuart and me proper tune-ups." "We can't have that," Reneus replied. Without further ado, Stuart and Falcon were given proper tune-ups. Once the workmen had finished, they gave each engine a new coat of paint and a new name. Stuart became Peter Sam, and Falcon became Sir Handel. Skyloy and Reneus made the newcomers feel welcome, and they're both happy now in their new home, but they still remember the old Mid-Sodor railway.